Yo, what's going on everybody, this is Rockin here, welcome back to a brand new video. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make your very own custom agent skins for your Valorant thumbnails, renders, videos, whatever. We're going to go over changing the colors of them and adding logos and things like that. Now in this video there's going to be three different methods. One is for when you already have a render or an image that you want to change the color of. The second is going to be for when you're using it in your 3D program, whether that's Blender, Cinema 4D, Maya, whatever, it doesn't matter, it all works the same. And then the other one is going to be for when you have a recorded cinematic or something of a character in game that you want to change the color of. I will have put examples on screen as I was talking so you can see the differences of what I'm talking about. I'll also leave timestamps in the description so you can skip to the points that interest you and actually apply to you. Just before we get started, I'd like to say please check out my channel for loads of other tutorials and edits and all things Valorant and editing related. I make loads of tutorials on all sorts of things like this. I'm sure there's going to be something else on there that will interest you, so drop a subscription as well if you find this useful, as well as follow me on my socials. Links will be in the description as well to all of those, and join the Discord. I'm trying to build a nice strong community. The Discord's quite active, come say hi. As well as if you don't have any of the software featured in this video, so I'm going to be using Photoshop, Blender and After Effects. The links for all of those will be in the description. This video isn't sponsored in any way. Some of those links will be affiliate links, meaning if you use them you will support the channel at no extra cost to yourself. And without any further ado, let's get into the video. So the first method is going to be for when you have an image or a render that you want to edit after the fact. So this is once it's come out of a 3D software, or like this one, I've just plucked it from the internet. I just googled Jett render and this is what came up. So for this we're going to be using Photoshop. You don't have to use Photoshop. You can use other free software like GIMP or paid software like Affinity Photo, whatever. As long as it has the ability to use gradient maps, you should be good to go. So what I'm going to do is decide what color do I want to make Jett. So inspired by my most recent montage where I made her red, I'm going to be making her red again. So to start off with, obviously you want to open up your render in Photoshop or whatever software you're using, and then you're going to want to create a gradient map. So in order to do that, I'm going to come down to the bottom over here and press this little icon here, and you'll see the option for gradient map. So I'm just going to tick that, and you'll see it's gone a bit strange. But now what I'm going to do is change the colors that I want. So I want to make her red, so I'm going to select this color over here, and I'm going to make this red. So I'm thinking something like that, and I'm going to make the color on this side black. So this is going to be our shadows. Now currently it looks inverted. That is because our gradient is the wrong way around. So I'm just going to hit OK and come over here to where it says reverse, and you'll see that looks a lot better. Now I think that red is slightly too pigmented, so I'm going to just come over and select one of the two, and you'll see this dot in the middle, and I'm going to drag this up towards the red, and hopefully that will make it a little bit darker, which it is, just like that. So I think somewhere around there is what I'm happy with, and I'm going to hit OK. And then on the gradient map you'll see we have this little rectangle. I'm going to select that, that is the mask, and I'm going to press Ctrl I to inverse it and make it black, and now you can see it's all disappeared. Now what I'm going to do is go over any of the parts that I think need to become red, so basically anywhere that's blue. So I'm going to start off with her top. You can make multiple gradient maps if you want. So for example, if you want to make the hair brown like I did in my other video, you can just make another gradient map and only apply that to the hair rather than the rest of the body. As well as if, for example, you're working on a blue like here, which is quite light, it looks good, but then on a darker blue it doesn't look as good, you can make another gradient map using a different type of red, and that way you can make sure that it looks good. So all I'm going to do now is literally just come in, I'm going to press B on my keyboard to get the brush, hold Alt and right click and drag out to make it bigger, and up and down to change the hardness. So for this I'm going to want maximum hardness. I'm going to drag all the way down, you'll see hardness goes to 100%, and I'm going to drag in slightly and go to a brush sort of about this size, and make sure that I have white selected. So at the moment I have black, I can click this little button right here to flip them, or press X on my keyboard does the same thing. If you have another color there, obviously make sure you select white. And all we're going to do now is paint white onto this black mask, and it's going to reveal the red that we had earlier. Now you can use a brush if you like, or you can use something like a lasso, and you can go around something like this and then just fill it with the color that we have. Obviously we want it to be white, and I can do that, and you can see now it's going to go red. Or you can use something like the pen tool if you want to get some sort of curvature, something sort of like this. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to use a brush, it's just easier. So I'm just going to grab the brush, and I'm going to roughly just go over all the parts I want to be red. So I need all this to be red, so I'm going to select all of this. Doesn't matter if I get a bit of the arm in, I can clean it up later. So I'm going to grab all of this, press G and fill in this area. G brings up the paint bucket, and then B to go back to the brush, And I'm just going to make sure that I filled in this whole area, so I want this to be red as well. And of course, if we ever want to make a change to our color, we can always go back over to the gradient, select the little gradient button here, and come up here, and we can always make it, say, brighter or darker, or even change the color entirely. Let's say I want to make a pink now. I can now do that if I wanted to. I'm going to go back to red just because that's what I was using already. Slightly more desaturated red, something like that, and then make it favor the red a little bit more. So we'll go for something like that. And I'm just going to go back around and keep painting. Make sure that you're painting onto the mask of the gradient map and not directly on your character, otherwise stuff like that is going to happen, which we don't want. So back onto the gradient map, make sure you have white selected, and I'm just going to go around. If you want to change the size of the brush, hold Alt, right click, drag inwards, and I'm just going to select this as well. And I'm going to go with that just for the moment. So now I'm going to go back around, and with a black brush this time, I'm going to press X again to invert back to black. Make sure you are on fully black. And I'm just going to go in and go a bit closer and remove any parts that should not be red. So for example here, I don't think that should be red. Nothing on her skin should be red. Press X on my keyboard to swap back to white again. Make sure that I paint in any bits that I accidentally removed that I didn't want to. And things like this, when it gets to the end of the hair, I need to make the brush smaller. So Alt, right click, drag inwards, and press Z on your keyboard to zoom. And I can come in any that's in there, just like that. I'm going to do the same to the other side. If it's quite a large image like this, you really don't need to be too accurate. But when you zoom out, ain't nobody going to notice that. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. You can toggle the layer on and off to see what should and shouldn't be coloured, should you need to do so. So I can see in here that little bit doesn't need to be as well. This shouldn't be here. Okay, so as you can see, I've done a pretty rough outline already. Parts in here are still blue, but I've got another method to take care of those. Parts on the shoes down here, and as well as parts of the hood maybe, are a little bit too dark. So what I can do is just duplicate this gradient map by pressing Ctrl J, hiding the bottom one. And if I come up to the top and just focus purely on the parts which I think are too dark, so for example, this part of the shoe, yes, it's not the most accurate colouring I've ever done in my life, but obviously this is just for the tutorial. But when you do it for yourself, you can be as accurate as you like. I'm just going to try and make this favour the red a little bit more for those sort of parts. So I'm going to do something like that, and you can see now the part of the shoes as well as here is a bit better. This red actually looks a bit nicer. It's just a bit blown out here. It looks nicer like this in my opinion. So what I am now going to do is do the exact same but in reverse. So any of the parts that I think were too dark, for example, so basically this hood, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna take the black on the original gradient map and get rid of all of that, just like this. And then if I enable the new one, you can see it's much nicer. Obviously the bottom one has been affected, so if I go back onto the mask for the top one, which is now the brighter one, I can go back down here and remove it from here. Now you can see up here we have the brighter gradient map applying to the hood and the darker one applying to the body, and that way it looks a lot nicer. So I'm going to do the exact same thing down here. So I think this one looked fine, so I like this part on the bottom map, so I'm going to go onto the top one and I'm going to delete that from that one, so you can see now that looks good. Then I'm going to go to the bottom one and delete this. So you're just going to want to check between the two which one you think looks nicer, and then delete from the one that you don't like. And now you can see the colours have been applied much more evenly. So you've got the darker parts of the blue with the top gradient, and the lighter parts of the blue with the bottom gradient. So now we've got a nice even shade of red everywhere. Now for the parts in here which are still blue, what I am going to do is take the bottom layer, press Ctrl J to duplicate it, and I'm going to come up to Image, Adjustments, and go to black and white and hit OK. And then make a mask on this image using the mask icon down here like that, and then press Ctrl I to invert that, and just go on to all of the blue bits here with the white selected on the mask of the black and white model. And I'm just gonna make sure I have white selected and go in and remove all of this blue, because I actually don't want this part to be red. Obviously if you wanted to, you can go ahead and make another gradient map and make this to a shade of red to your liking. I want it grey, and there we go. We have a blue highlight and a hair up here, which really doesn't make that big of a difference. Obviously I could remove it just like that. That does also remove the the yellow from her hair, which, you know, if I feathered the brush a bit, maybe I could, there you go, sort of remove that. Not too obvious. I'm just going to leave it because I can do a separate gradient map for the hair like I did in Red Roses, where I made it brown. If you wanted to do that, obviously you can. For the sake of the tutorial, I'm not going to bother, but obviously you now know how to, so you can do that if you want to. And the next part to making a custom design would be maybe to add a logo or to add maybe stripes or something like that. So for example, I could come to one of the gradients and I could, for example, lasso, say I want to put some stripes in here, so I could do stripes like this. Hold shift and make another one. Obviously try and make these as even as you can, or even use the rectangle select tool. Just make sure when you make a new selection you hold shift and make another one. So for example, there we go, I've got some stripes here, so I could come to the gradient map that actually applies to this, go in there, press B for the brush and make sure it's black, and I could remove all of that, and then I could then make another gradient map, even black and white like that, looks kind of nice. So I'll then remove, make sure my hardness is at 100% and the brush is a bit smaller. Remove that. And now we've added some stripes, and of course you can do that anywhere with any color. We just use black and white by default. You want to make this pink, don't know why you'd want to. You want to, there you go. I'll make it favor the black a bit more, so it's a bit, there you go. If you want that, you got it. Don't know why you'd want that, but if you do, there you go, you know how to do it. Of course, you don't just have to do stripes, you could literally get the pen tool out and draw something on there if you wanted to. Now, for example, if I wanted to add a logo, I've just imported this Valorant logo. I'll drag it to the top so it doesn't go underneath the gradient maps, otherwise you'll get weird stuff like this happening. So make sure it's on top. I'm going to make this white, so we'll go for a white color and clipping mask it to that. There we go. So you can see now we have a white Valorant logo. If I wanted to add this, I could do something like this. Control T to transform. If you just drag it normally, obviously it's going to stay with its aspect ratio. You hold shift, it's going to be deformed. So let's say I wanted to put this something like that, for example. There you go, I can add it relatively easily. I could do the exact same thing with her hands. So for example, if I wanted to put the Valorant logo on her hands, I could come, make sure I select the bottom layer, and I'm going to quickly lasso out this icon that's already here. Right click, and I'm going to go fill, and hopefully content aware will do a good job, which it didn't, but I can hopefully fill content aware again, fill content aware again, make some final touches to the parts that it didn't quite get, and there we go. That looks much better. Grab the Valorant logo, Control T, rotate it upside down, scale it down, put it on a hand just like that, and now we have the Valorant logo there instead. That's how you would add logos. You can obviously grab it and do edit, transform, and go to perspective and things like that, so you could sort of skew it a bit so that it looks a bit more accurate. There's obviously plenty of other options you can play around with as well, but just as a basic, so you get a good understanding of what you need to do to make custom Valorant skins, that is essentially how you do it for a image that you already have. Now next up we're going to go on to changing skins in 3D. Okay, so now on to 3D. I'm going to be using Blender. You can use Cinema 4D, Maya, whatever, it doesn't matter. They all work the exact same way. The Valorant models will be imported using the same textures. So all you're going to want to do is go to the shading tab or the material tab or whatever you have in whatever software you're using, and all you want to do is just extract the textures that are on your model. So I'm going to go to the shading tab, and you can see I have the model selected. There's a couple different materials on here. So we have obviously the body materials, the eye materials. This is the hair material, so if I wanted to change the hair, obviously I can go for that. I'm just going to be using the body one, so you see if I remove this, the material disappears, add it back, it's back. So this is going to be the one I want to export. This is the diffuse texture. You can leave the normal maps and leave the MRAs unless you're making some crazy edits to the textures, then you may want to touch those, but if it's literally just a simple color change or something like that, then all you're going to want is the depth map. So to export the texture, because most likely, especially if you get it from my pack, which I'll leave a link in the description to where you can get that, it's completely free. The textures are going to already be, as you can see, packed into the .blend file, so you won't actually have the image on your computer. So in order to get that, you're going to click this little button right here, and you're going to hit use file from current directory, create when necessary. So that's going to then create a file for this texture, which you can see if I now open, you can see in the folder that I have the blend file in, it's created the diffuse texture image image for me. If you're using Cinema 4D, it may not work exactly like that, but the end goal is to get the diffuse texture from the 3D model, however you would do that in your software. So now I'm going to open up that folder, and you can see here's the Jett.blend that we're using, and in the textures folder we have the diffuse texture. So if I double click on this, it's going to automatically open up in Photoshop. You can use another software like I said, GIMP or Affinity Photo or anything, as long as you have the option for gradient maps. So you can see this is the texture that we're working with. This is the diffuse texture for the 3D model, and essentially what you're going to want to do is copy exactly what we did for the previous method, which is if you had an already rendered image, and we're just going to do the exact same thing on here. So the same steps, we're going to come down to here, go to gradient map, and I'm going to go for red again. So I'm going to grab this, make this black, because obviously we want that to be our shadow. It doesn't really matter, you can just tick reverse like we did last time, and then I'm going to come up here and try and find a red that I think looks good. So if we bear in mind that, if I quickly disable this, this is the blue that is going to be on a jacket, same as here. So we're going to want to make sure that that becomes the red that we want it to be. So if I focus on this and re-enable the gradient map, come back in here, make this black, and I'm going to make this to a red shade that I am happy with. So it's going to be something like that. And then all I'm going to do is press Ctrl I with the gradient map selected with this mask, press Ctrl I, invert it, and then I can go in, as long as I have the mask selected, with a brush just like this, painting with white, and you can see I can now colour all the bits that I want to be red in red. Now on parts like this, for example, where obviously it's going to be too dark, you can make another gradient map, just Ctrl J to duplicate the previous one. You may want to erase where you've already gone over, so like that. And then we can choose, so this area we want to be a more lighter red, so I'm going to come up and change the gradient of this one. So I'm going to drag the midpoint across a bit more so we get a slightly brighter red, something like that. And there you go. As you can see, if I paint with this gradient on this mask, it's going to make all of the darker ones a nice lighter red, and if I use this one on the lighter blues, it's going to make them another nice red. Now you can go through and lasso, just like I said with the other ones. You can lasso out, so for example if I grab the polygonal lasso, I can go in and grab, say I want this straight edge here, and then I want it to come down like this one like this, like this, like this, like this, and select it just like that if you want to, or you can go through with a brush just like we did last time, and essentially just go on to figure out which parts of the model are what. So for example, that's obviously her eye, this is obviously her back, just like that. You can obviously reference the model and figure out which parts are which. Basically just change anything that's her dominant colour, so blue, into whatever colour you want it to be, and that is essentially how you're going to change the colour. So I'll be back with you in a second once I've done that. Okay, so as you can see, I'm done. I didn't actually go through and change the colours of all of that individually. I just literally took the texture that I had, that I already did from my red roses montage, and imported that in. But this is essentially what you can expect to see. As you can see, I've made everything red that was blue, but I've left this back out as white. I've made everything else that I didn't want to colour grayscale except for her skin. I've changed the colour of her eye. I've changed this on here to be red. If I grab the old texture and bring that in, you can see it was white before, and now it is red. So I'll just flick between the two, and you can see all the changes that I've made. Pretty simple, just basically colouring to make things like, for example, up here, this is the inside of her mouth. Whether it's grey or pink really doesn't matter unless you're going to be opening her mouth. So in mine it's grey, but you're never going to see it, so it's alright. And then once you're done with that, all you're going to do is press Ctrl Shift S, save as, and find where you want to save it. So for example, I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to save it as a TGA because that's what it was saved as before. You can save it as a PNG, I don't think it makes much of a difference. I'm just going to save it as a TGA just because, and I'm going to rename it, so it's called TP Wushu S0DF, and I'm going to type red in all caps at the end so I know the difference, and leave it at 24 bits per pixel. It really doesn't make a difference. And I'm going to close it, and there you go. So now you can see we have our red version and our standard version, and I'm going to go back in and hit the little open folder and select the red version, open image, and there you go. Just like that, you can see we now have a red model. The emissions gone over straight away. If I quickly go to Eevee and Bloom, there you go. You can see if I increase intensity, there you are. We've got the emission is enabled because of the way that the nodes were set up before, so that's no issue. And literally just like that, anything that was blue before is now red. Of course, you could add your own logos on, just like I showed you with the other image. The first method, it works the exact same way. I could put the Valorant logo on her top or whatever if I wanted to, and it really is that simple to just export the texture, change the color using a gradient map, and re-import it back in and use the new colored version. And just as a quick sneak peek as to what I did for my Red Roses montage to make the color change over time, this is how the nodes were set up. So you can see we have the original textures, normal maps, MRAEs, going into this group node, which I'll show you in a second, and then we have the new one with the red version going in. I've also got different textures for the hair as well, going into this custom group node which I made, which is pretty simple. I'm gonna assume you know how to use Blender if you're attempting to do this. Otherwise, I'm gonna make a Blender animation tutorial series as soon as I've got my updated Valorant assets pack completed with maps, models, gun skins, etc. Basically everything that you will ever need. This is how it works. Basically, I've got an empty object working as a texture coordinate, which is essentially controlling the stage at which the texture is changed. So if I go back to the standard layout, essentially you can see this empty right here is controlling how much the texture has changed. So all I did was keyframe this empty object moving from right to left, and as it goes past, you can see it changes the texture from the original blue into the red version using the node group that I have set up over here. Again, I'll go into more detail. That's just a little bonus extra bit of information that I thought I'd add for people that know what they're doing. Otherwise, you can just make the animation with the red texture right from the get-go. And finally, the third method of changing the color / skin of a Valorant agent. So this is going to be for if you have a video, for example, a cinematic, like for example here you can see I have a cinematic of Jett running in and jumping past the camera just like that, and I want to change the color from blue to red. So the way I'm going to do that is find a frame where I have a lot of the color showing. I'm doing this in Adobe After Effects, by the way. I don't know of many other software that can do this. I believe Premiere Pro might have the option, and I would assume Sony Vegas does. You'll have to research it. I don't know off the top of my head, but I definitely know After Effects does because I've done it. If you don't have After Effects, check out the link in the description where you can get it. It is an affiliate link, so it does support the channel if you do choose to use that. But essentially all you're going to want to do is come over to Effects and Presets and search Change, and you'll see Change to Color. I'm going to drag that onto the clip, and you'll see From, so I'm going to select the blue, and you'll see To, and I'm going to go for a red color just like that. And then you can get the tolerance here. You've got the hue, the lightness, and the saturation, so I'm going to change the hue up a little bit, and as I do that, you'll see all the blue will suddenly change to red, and just like that, the skin has gone from blue to red, and it will look like that the entire way through. You can see as she runs in, jumps past the camera, and it is red the entire time. Occasionally, so for example if I disable it and re-enable it, you can see the shadow over here has been changed from, what is that, like a sort of pinky color to more of a darker red. People probably will not notice that, so you don't really need to bother changing it particularly. If you wanted to, you could rotoscope or mask out the agent and then do the change to color option, and that way it will only affect the agent. But in this case, that is literally as simple as it gets, the easiest possible way to change from one color to another. Some colors might be a bit funny, but from what I can see from cycling through these, basically every color works, and if you really wanted to, you could probably keyframe the colors. And there you go, you can see with just some simple keyframing I've managed to make her outfit rainbow. If you wanted to do that for whatever reason, you definitely can. But that is literally how simple it is to do it to a cinematic. So if you're no good at 3D stuff, so Blender, Cinema 4D, whatever, this is probably the next best thing. Just get your mate in a custom game to act it out, and use the change to color option if you want to add a custom skin to it. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you'd like me to make another tutorial on recording cinematics now that they've changed the options as far as removing HUD and things goes, to record cinematics like this without any name tags or any HUD elements or anything like that, then do leave a like on this video and let me know in the comments section, as well as follow me on all of my social media. Join the Discord server, we'd really love to have you there, as well as check out my channel for other tutorials all relating to Valorant and editing. I'm sure you can find something there that you'll like, as well as my previous edit, Red Roses, where I did use the techniques shown in this video. And without any further ado, have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.